The northeast quadrant of Iowa is commonly referred to as being part of the driftless area, a four-state geological phenomenon that has dodged glaciers for hundreds of thousands of years. This luck has allowed Iowa's river communities to have a very distinct look, with many hosting town centers below an east-facing rock bluff. A picturesque setting for literally every town in Allamakee, Clayton, Jackson, and Dubuque counties. But one feature of the Dubuque Bluffs that was constructed in the late 1800s can't be found in any other part of the state, country, and possibly world.
We claim to be the shortest and the steepest railway in the country. Actually, we'll push it out to the world, there might be some that's shorter, there might be some that's steeper, but we claim to be the shortest and the steepest.
Shortest, steepest, or a combination of the two, the Fenelon Place Elevator is certainly unique. It is also historic. For more than 100 years, the elevator has been carrying residents and visitors alike to the top of the Dubuque Bluffs. While today it is mostly a tourist attraction, its origin is purely logistical.
Back in 1882, the whole town shut down at noon for an hour and a half for lunch. Now, there was a banker that lived up the street, and he worked down below. And in order to go up and down the hill for lunch, he would go by horse and buggy around the bluffs. There was no streets up here yet. And it took him a half hour each way to come up and down. So a half hour to come up, half hour to go down, half hour lunch would be no problem, right? Hour and a half. He'd like to take a half hour nap as well.
By July 1882, former Dubuque Mayor Julius K. Graves' dream of a swift commute was finally in place. The elevator's original system consisted of a single wooden car being pulled up and down wooden rails on a rope and winch by a coal-fired steam engine boiler. While the system allowed for a quick trek to and from work, it required close attention to remain safe.
In the morning, he'd have his gardener lower him down, only took about 3 minutes to go down. And then at noon, he'd have his gardener raise him up again and then lower. So he had plenty of time, plenty of time for his nap. And at the end of each day, when they were done using the cable car, the gardener would go down the basement and he would open up the firebox and he'd have to bank or pile up the coals in order to have enough fire left in the morning to start it up again. And when he did this, if a live ember would fall on the floor and he didn't notice it, he'd go home and it'd start a fire in the basement. And the fire would burn through the hemp rope, and down the hill the car would go crashing. So 1882, first cable car, first fire. 1884, the banker rebuilt it, and he started charging the neighbors a nickel.
For the next 10 years, Mr. Graves privately owned and operated the elevator until once again a fire destroyed the system in 1893. But with the banking industry in economic peril, Graves decided against rebuilding the elevator.
And at that time there was a recession, so the banker couldn't afford to rebuild it. But the neighbors had come to depend upon it, that there were 10 people in the neighborhood that decided, well, let's buy the banker out and rebuild. And they created the Fenelon Place Elevator Company. The street up here is Fenelon Place. They named it after the street.
As luck would have it, the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago showcased a new invention, a cable car system that used steel cables to pull cars and an electric controller to safely navigate them. Using this innovation as a guide, the 10 Fenelon Place investors redesigned the elevator as a funicular, wherein two counterbalanced cars ride parallel tracks.
The track is very old, but the ties were original when the track got installed. We have metal ties too. They were installed in the 1960s. There's wooden rollers that the cable rides on. We make them out of a solid block of red elm, and we machine them down to a cylinder, attach the hardware to them, and put them on the hill. And the cable, we have two cables, a safety cable and a drive cable. So if something happens with the drive cable, the safety cable will hold the cars in place. The cars were remade in 1977. The cars are made of sheet metal, or about 45 years old or something like that.
Since that neighborhood partnership reimagined the elevator, Fenelon Place has stayed relatively the same, with only the ownership changing hands.
My wife's great-grandfather was one of the original 10. And as the other 9 stockholders would die or move, he would buy their stock. So in 1912, he had all the stock, so it became a family-run business.
From the turn of the 20th century to today, the elevator has remained a staple of Dubuque. It serves as both a serious means to commute to and from town for residents on the bluff, and a spot for visitors to take in a special piece of local history while enjoying the gorgeous view.
Well, it's a very unique attraction, and it's a labor-saving tool, so to speak. There's still people in the neighborhood, a few, that live up here and work down there, so they utilize it. But really, over the last 2 decades, it became a tourist attraction. We're an icon in the community. We've had people that come to Dubuque just to ride the elevator. We've had people worldwide. One year, we opened up April 1st. The first 3 riders was a group of 3. A guy from Los Angeles, his best friend from New York, and his girlfriend from Venezuela. How much international can you get? And of course, the view is spectacular.